As promised in my very first hat pattern that I've released, I am providing you with a tutorial to start your hats with magic loop. Now, any of my hats you can always start in your favorite way. You can do a chain and crochet however many times the pattern calls for the first round into that first chain. You can do a chain and link them and then do those into that chain, which will result in a little bit bigger hole. I prefer the magic loop, and usually whenever I do a pattern that calls for one of the other two styles, I usually switch it to magic loop and just keep on going. So they are interchangeable, it's just whatever you prefer. This is my favorite method because it results in a really small hole at the top of the hat that you're doing the rounds. So all I have here, I think I have an eye hook in here, and this is just some worsted weight. Hobby Lobby, I love this yarn. I chose a light color just so you can kind of see what's going on. You're going to, if you're right-handed, hold the yarn with the tail to the left. You will, put my hook down for a second, you will wrap the yarn around the back of your fingers, back around the front. Pinch where those cross, right there. You'll put your hook in through the front of the loop with the long tail of the yarn that's coming out of the skein in the back. You'll pull that through just like you're pulling up a loop. Now go ahead and pinch the tail of the yarn over there. So you've basically just pulled up a loop, and then what you're going to do is you're going to do a chain to lock it. And you can pull that down pretty tight. Sorry, I keep getting out of frame. I'm using this improvised cardboard easel because I'm out of state for work right now, but hopefully you'll be able to get the idea. So what you did there, you wrapped the yarn around, you had the long tail of the yarn in the back, you went in, pulled it through just like a loop, and then so you had one loop through, and then you did a chain and pulled it tight just to kind of lock everything in place. So now everything should be in pretty good shape. For this example, I will do half double crochets. So you already did the chain one. I'm going to do a chain two. No, that was three. Then you will yarn over, go into the circle, into the loop that you made, and you will do all your crochets for the first round over the circle and the short tail that you created when you first did the loop. So there's 1 and 2. The first chains count as 1, so that was 2. There's 3. There's 4. Can't work very quickly with this camera in front of me. My hands are at an awkward angle. There's 5. There's 6. There are 7. And there are 8. Now for a single crochet hat, I will usually start with 6. For a double crochet hat, I will usually start with 8, like I've done here. And for a double crochet hat, I will typically start with 12. The reason you need, a longer stitch, requires more around is because, a longer stitch, longer radius, bigger circumference. So basically, this is how I start my half double crochet hats. Like I said, I usually make this end tail a little bit longer just so that it doesn't get lost into one of the stitches when I'm tightening this up. So I usually hold my work in my left hand like so, grab that short tail that you made at the very beginning, and just give it a tug. And there you have closed up your loop. There's still a little bit of a gap over here. You could do 10. 10 would work pretty nicely. 12 tends to be a little much, and then it starts to ruffle a little bit. But if you do 8, sort of be a little bit too tight, but I like to have my hats in multiples of 4. It's just easier to do some motifs and divide by that without having to add in some stitches to get to 4. So I typically just do 8. It gives it a nice little cup shape. It's very gentle at the beginning. So then what you do there is you get back to, you put that short tail back behind there and just kind of ignore it. You've already, gone over it a little bit, but at the end all you do is turn your hat inside out and weave that in, and you're good to go. So then, whether your hat pattern calls for you to continue in a spiral, you would mark this first stitch right here, which is not the top of the chain, it's actually the first actual stitch, or and then you would just go around and around marking your spiral. If you're gonna do one like that, what I typically do is make this short tail really, really long, and then I mark the row, up and over as I crochet over it, and then up and over as I crochet over it, and then I just keep flipping it back and forth. Then when you get to the end, you can just unwind it out because it kind of looks silly going down the side of the hat. The other thing that you can do, like I said, that's for going in the spiral, or you can just use a piece of scrap yarn or a stitch marker, whatever you prefer. The other way that you can do it is to join, chain up, go around, join, chain up, go around, join, chain up, go around. I typically prefer to do spirals, but there's some reasons that sometimes I go against what I prefer and do the join and go up. I don't like the seam, and they're really unavoidable even as much as you try to hide them. But if you were going to do the spiral, like I said, you would go into this first stitch right here with whatever your stitch pattern calls for. Half double, you'd go around, go in, or what you would do is slip stitch to this first stitch. And sometimes in half double crochet, a designer will have you slip stitch into the top of the second chain, and actually that's how it is done in the Bubble Bobble beanie, which is, I love to say, that is the first one that I've released. It just to keep the pattern right and keep it kind of squared up is the way that I wrote that. If you do the slip join into the top of the stitch, your seam tends to kind of hook a little bit, and it looks a little cruder. The way that I do it in the Bubble Bobble beanie is it's a curved seam. I'll show you an example here. It is a curved seam, but it's pretty gentle, and it hides it the best. So here's the top, and the seam just kind of comes around to the motif, but it all stays pretty much in the back. I know it's kind of hard to see, but that's my favorite way to do the half double, even though it's not perfect. You can still see it, which is, like I said, why I usually do the spiral technique, but it is what it is. To get the counts right, that was the easiest way to do that. So like I said, you would continue around. I always try to crochet in the joining stitch, unless it's going to whack out my stitch count. Lucky for me is that in this kind I crochet into the joining stitch, and that counts as my 2, and then you continue the pattern around, 2 into each, and then 2 1 2 1 2 1. So it doesn't work out too badly. So you would do 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And then you would join, and then you would chain up 2 and go around again. So it works out pretty nicely. And like I said, this chain usually in my patterns always counts as a stitch. Some patterns it won't. You just have to kind of pay attention to that. But that is the way to do a magic loop, and you see how, I don't know if you can see or not, how that hole is basically gone. There's nothing there. And that's how I prefer to start my hats. Like I said, I usually, if there's a hat that calls for the chain and then do so many into the first, I usually just skip it and see how many's in the first round and just go directly to this, just because that's the way I prefer. So that is the magic loop, along with some other little tips and tricks about crocheting in the round. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments, or you can always email me at heathervision@yahoo.com. And like I said, I truly do apologize for the angle and for getting out of frame a little bit, but this was my lovely little easel that I was working with my phone just kind of stuck right there in that slot. I usually use my iPad with a nice arm over my desk and get a nice vertical shot, but this is the best I could do in Colorado, far away from all of my stuff in Alabama. So bear with me, and as soon as I get back, I'll put up a little bit better video with a better angle from the top so that I don't get my hook out of frame so much. So like I said, if any questions in the meantime, always email me or leave a comment below. Thank you.